Okay. Well, tonight is one of those nights where we ask the question of whatever happened to global warming. It's kind of cold around here these days, isn't it? So I guess global warming is a thing of the past. But thank you all for coming to the North Reading Republican Town Committee MBTA Forum. We have a special guest, our state auditor, Diana DiZoglio. Everybody give her a hand, please. Diana's going to focus, she's going to talk about two things. She's going to talk about the MBTA briefly, and then she's going to focus on the auditing of the state legislature. So she's going to focus on that. Okay. And then we also have from Wilmington, who voted the MBTA down. Okay, so we should give Lilia an applause for that. Okay. Okay. And she's going to share with us, what the issues they had to face, how they dealt with them, and what was going to find out which was going to prevail for the town. They made a good decision. Middleton made a good decision as well. Now it's up to North Reading to make the same decision. But I'm going to bring here now the state auditor, who's taking her time out. She has a short window to work with, so listen to her carefully.
This makes it easier. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. Oh, I only to say it that first time to get a response. I love it here. My name is Diana DiZoglio. I humbly serve as your state auditor. I am a Methuen gal, just down the road. I was a state representative for 6 years, a state senator for 4 years. I had the opportunity to serve alongside of your legislative delegation here. Senator Bruce Tarr sends his regards. He is in the Senate right now filing amendments on behalf of the region and wanted me to pass along those regards. But I did want to make sure that I took the opportunity to come out to meet with folks tonight just upon invitation and to just make myself available to answer some questions, comments, concerns about some of the challenges that are going on locally and across the state, but also just to provide a brief update on what is going on. So I'm going to actually start with the legislative audit. The legislative audit here in Massachusetts, first and foremost, I want to thank you. How many folks in here are part of the Republican Town Committee? I hear a lot. Thank you. How many from the Democratic Town Committee? All right, we got a couple right over here. Thank you. And then how many people don't belong to any of these groups and just came over this evening? Fantastic. So I love the mix here tonight of people from all political affiliations, Democrats, Republicans, and everybody in between. There's a really great showing of just residents of the community. And I just want to ask really quickly, out of all of you who are Republicans, Democrats, and someone in between, how many of you voted for the legislative audit? You don't have to raise your hand, but okay. Well, a good chunk of you. Thank you for that. So most of us voted for the legislative audit, 72% of us did, and I really appreciate the opportunity to fight hard currently for the implementation of the law that you voted for. This is a nonpartisan issue. I am a registered Democrat, full disclosure. I like to make that known when I come into places like that. I am here because I believe that these are nonpartisan issues that we are working on right now, and that transparency, accountability, and good government is not a partisan issue. I think that we all want to know what's going on in our government. We all want access to know how our tax dollars are being spent. And then we can have the debates about how it gets spent, right? But we need to first be able to see how our money is getting spent before we can enter into a debate about how to spend it, right? So right now in the Office of State Auditor, we're just trying to get access to how the state legislature is spending our taxpayer dollars through state contracts, for example, and through their just financial receipts that we're trying to get access to. They have refused, even after a 72% vote on question 1 to audit the legislature via the state auditor's office, they are refusing to give our office basic financial documents that for every other state entity that complies with the public records law is a matter of public record. If you call your town here in North Reading and you ask for documents such as receipts and backup information for why an expenditure with your tax dollars occurred, they're required to give it to you by law. The law that the legislature passed and voted for years ago. So it is amazing to think, and very unfortunate to think, that the same legislature that makes laws that are imposed on these local communities, such as these public records laws, themselves do not have to follow the same rules. These are taxpayer-funded documents. We deserve access to what's going on with the expenditure of our tax dollars. You good?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I didn't know if he was giving me the hook, saying, that's enough.
You got it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So friends, we're just trying to get access to these receipts, these basic financial documents, for the purposes of being able to write our audit report and get that information out to all of you, to shine a light on what's going on up on Beacon Hill, so that we all have increased access. Our state legislature is frequently ranked as the least transparent legislature in the entire nation, okay?
Hey, we're number
The
one.
least transparent in the entire nation.
Wow.
That is completely unacceptable. We can do better. And these audits, you know, I think that they seem kind of scary to people, but just to clarify what an audit is not, you know, some surprise investigation of an agency. These audits happen routinely of most state agencies, those who comply, and it's a collaboration. It is a conversation essentially with these state agencies, with these state entities, about how they can do better to better serve taxpayers. We speak with them, we go in, we look at what's going on, we work with them, and we make a series of recommendations through that collaborative discussion and audit process. It's an audit, it's not an FBI investigation. And that's what we've said, is we are here to help to prevent those types of things from becoming the case, right? We go in and we help state agencies. You know, we have to tell folks when we come in, we're here to help. We know it can be scary, but please communicate with us, collaborate with us, tell us, what you think about, the questions that we're asking and what your challenges are in your agency, so that we can look at these things together and write an audit report that is reflective of how to better serve taxpayers across the Commonwealth. So audits are there to help, they're not there to hurt. And yes, they identify some challenges, usually speaking, because human beings work in these state agencies. So since we don't have robots working in these state agencies and there are humans, generally speaking, we find errors and we write the report and we let them know how to fix those errors. And when state agencies welcome these audits, it's better for all of us. We're all the better for it. But unfortunately, our state legislature still refuses to see the value in complying with a simple audit. It's a simple audit. We have been very clear about what we want to look at right now. We have practically begged the Attorney General to help. She will not be helping. She is not going to help us to sue the legislature into compliance. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how much more I beg, plead, ask for help. It's not happening. So we need the law to get enforced. Our Attorney General will not help to enforce the law, no matter what documents I give, no matter how many questions I answer. So I do need the help of the people who are still interested in seeing this audit happen. If you have any assistance you'd like to send my way, please send it. Please keep letting your legislators know that you fully support this. Please, even though I don't expect the Attorney General to change her mind, please feel free to contact the Attorney General and, state your opinion on this regardless. And please advocate to whoever you can. And if you have some legal expertise, feel free to give me a call and let me know if you have some legal paths forward that we might take in the face of not being able to get assistance from our top law enforcement agent of this Commonwealth in this matter. Because we do need the law to enforce. What the Speaker is saying right now is that with respect to the audit law and with respect to the law, and I quote, "Compliance is in the eye of the beholder." That's a quote from our Speaker of the House, that with respect to the law, compliance is in the eye of the beholder. And I have heard folks say, well, the Democrat leadership up on Beacon Hill. It's because of the Democrats. I need to, as a Democrat, defend my good neighbors and friends who are Democrats as well, who do not at all subscribe to that type of behavior, who are vehemently opposed to the law breaking that's going on up on Beacon Hill. But, you know, people around the state cannot vote for, they all can't vote for or against the speaker, right? They all can't vote for or against some of these people who continue to break the law. So some folks keep getting reelected, who have a letter next to their name, who make decisions that most of us would not agree with, regardless of our party affiliation, and they are able to stay in power because they've wielded so much power that they just keep wielding more power, and absolute power does corrupt, absolutely. And that's what we're seeing right now. But what we are working on, it is a nonpartisan issue. The Massachusetts GOP endorsed this initiative, and I was very grateful that your party leaders took a call from a Democrat statewide leader. Thank you for speaking to me about this and for supporting this initiative and for putting partisan politics aside to make sure that we could move forward on an issue important to all of us. And the Massachusetts State Democratic Committee also endorsed this unanimously. That tells you something about how much as Massachusetts residents we have in common. And it's really nice to see that during such a divisive political time, right? Is to know that we do have a lot in common, and we don't have to agree on everything, but we do have a lot in common. And we need to find ways to work together however we can when it comes to bettering our communities. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this. We cannot take on a corrupted establishment unless we are talking to each other and putting the things that we disagree with each other on to the side so that we can talk about what we do agree on. And that's what it's going to take to make sure that this gets done, because friends, the political pushback up on Beacon Hill regarding this issue is not something that I can handle alone. Okay, my party leaders would love to get rid of me right now. Okay, but they are not reflective of the average everyday people who are in our communities who just want access to what's happening and want to be part of the solution. And I'm so grateful that we have so many people here tonight that understand that. And I just want to thank you for that. So please keep pushing and please keep advocating for that audit, for increased transparency, and for collaboration on these areas where we can agree, okay? With respect to 3A, the MBTA law. So I am going to start this. I feel like it's in the spirit of transparency. Though some of you may not like this, I just want to be honest with you. I think it's important we are who we are, you know, and put it all out there. I voted for this bill to become law, okay? Now I did this alongside of my Republican colleagues and my Democrat colleagues when I was in the state Senate. And we voted for this issue because we want to make sure that we are creating housing opportunities across the Commonwealth. Fast forward, after we voted for this issue, there's been an incredible amount of fallout in communities, you know, either adopting it, not adopting it, having differences of opinion, having robust debates. I understand that as someone who served in the legislature for 10 years. I was up debating all the time, and sometimes we'd be on the same side, sometimes we'd be on opposite sides. And I understand there's a debate going on locally here right now. I want to, from my auditor's role right now, talk about one of the issues that's come out of the state auditor's office recently, and that is this issue of the unfunded mandate aspect of the MBTA Communities Law. Now, when we voted on this in the Senate, again, I believe it was unanimous. This was a bipartisan thing. It wasn't Democrat, it wasn't Republican. Most everybody was in agreement. These bills are put through the process very quickly. I just actually watched a debate before I came here. I was watching the Senate session, and someone was up on the floor talking about how they didn't get to read what they were being required to vote on, and how they wanted an opportunity to better vet the legislation before taking a position. But they're going to be required to vote on it anyways. Okay? That's happening right now as we speak in that Senate session that I was just watching. When this bill went through the process, it was not properly vetted. It was not properly vetted. It was well-intentioned, but it was not properly vetted. So what ended up happening is, even though it was well-intentioned, there was not a funding mechanism put in this bill to make sure that the bill actually has what's known as contemporaneous funding to be able to cover the costs associated with the implementation of the law. Our office has a legal mandate on it through our Division of Local Mandates, which was created under a law that was passed by citizen petition back in 1983, the year I was born. I feel like normally, I have to sit here when I say this, and I feel like I'm grateful to be in this room right now. A lot of my staff calls me mom, so I want to just thank this room for that laugh in the other direction, I feel like. But Friends, the year I was born, 1983, there was a citizen petition. It was on the ballot to ensure that folks had an opportunity to vote on these unfunded mandates, coming down to communities that the state is required to fund the mandates that it puts on these local communities. When the MBTA Communities Law was passed, it was not properly vetted. Subsequently, the SJC recently ruled that this law is a mandate, which means it is required, it is law, it is a mandate. Communities are required to follow this. The law is the law. That's the Supreme Judicial Court ruling. Once that happened, it triggered the local mandate law, because it's now been ruled a mandate. It was in question before then, whether or not it was a formal legal mandate or if it was just optional for communities. Our office has a legal mandate under that citizen petition that was passed in 1983 through our Division of Local Mandates to respond to communities who call us and who ask us for an opinion about whether or not a law is funded contemporaneously the way it is supposed to be and in accordance with the local mandate law. So our Division of Local Mandates looked at the law, saw that it does not have contemporaneous funding to go along with the law, and saw that it did have a grant program set up, but the grant program is only available upon request, if you get access to the grants, and it's not available to everybody. In order for the local mandate law to be satisfied, you need to make sure that you have that funding available and accessible to everybody who is passing this legislation in their local communities. That funding mechanism, being a grant program and not mandatory in nature, is really where a lot of this problem lies regarding the funding aspect. This is actually a very simple fix. It's not a challenging fix, it is a very simple fix. The legislature or the administration or anybody who can implement these policies simply needs to go in and they need to ensure that they put language in to the budget. They could do it this week. They could do it this week, and they know they could do it this week. I don't think that they're doing this right now, but they know that they can. And just put in language that says that this shall be fully funded. They can even use the grant program that they already set up to ensure that this is fully funded. For some reason, we've been getting a lot of backlash over that, and we're not really sure why. But I can tell you that when we did this with early voting, we made early voting available to everybody in the legislature. You can go, you can vote early at your town hall now in all your elections. That was a mandate. I voted for it. I was proud to vote for early voting so you can go in and you can cast your ballot without waiting in the long lines on election day. But it costs money. It was a mandate from the state, so my office ruled it to be an unfunded mandate. We did not have the, sort of backlash that we're getting about this, about that. It's the same issue. It's just that you have to make sure that you are funding things that you're mandating on communities. We now give your communities for early voting, we give your clerk's offices, we give them money from the state now, since our office determined this to be an unfunded mandate. And your clerks actually call my office quite often, and they submit their expenses so that our office can count the dollars and make sure that the state reimburses you for the costs of your early voting. Just so you get reimbursed, you have a lot of local issues going on that you need to make sure you're covering the costs for. And that's what our office does. We identify some of those areas. Now, I just need to be clear, however, what this does not do, whether you're on the side of the MBTA Communities Act, whether you're opposed to this, the Office of State Auditor does not take a position on either side of this issue. It just issues a determination about whether something is appropriately funded in accordance with the law. It is not opposed, it is not for. The Office of State Auditor is just for making sure that it's calling balls and strikes. That's it. I can have my opinion, you can have your opinion, but the Division of Local Mandates issues its opinion, and they do so based on calling balls and strikes. Is it funded or is it not funded? And this was not appropriately funded. It is not, however, some sort of a get out of jail free card for folks who may not love the idea of these zoning laws. The SJC has determined this to be a mandate. They have determined it to be law, and nothing that the state auditor's office does changes that. We do not overrule, we do not do rulings on these things. We obey the law, and because the SJC determined this to be a mandate, that's actually the only reason why it could even be determined to be unfunded. So that does mean that the law is the law, and it also happens to not be funded in accordance with another law. So I know that this has been pretty confusing for people, and I get it, because there has been a lot of different rhetoric coming out of the State House and Beacon Hill on this, and I do believe that this unfunded mandate has been blown a little out of proportion by some of the leaders up on Beacon Hill who maybe jumped the gun in thinking that our determination meant something that it didn't. But I do like to come out and just let folks know that this is simply about a funding mechanism. We in the Office of State Auditor want to fight to get you as much of those state resources as you're entitled to under law, and that's what the office is there to do. We do not have the ability in the Office of State Auditor to set policy, however, for the Commonwealth. I do have people calling often who say, what is a direct cost and what is an indirect cost with respect to this unfunded mandate issue? What would count as a cost? And they'll throw out a list of different costs. We in the Office of State Auditor do not set policy. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities under law was directed to set these regulations, to make these determinations, and to file a financial impact statement that stated what direct costs were. Because that was not done appropriately, when it was done, we do not know what the direct costs are, what direct costs will be, but we can guess that they're going to be pertaining to the zoning aspect based on what the administration has said up to this point. And they are the ones, not the Office of State Auditor, who decide what constitutes a direct cost and what constitutes an indirect cost. And when they put out that financial impact statement, which hopefully they do, we look at the financial impact statement, and then we get to connect with communities. We look at what the administration files in their financial impact statement, what they say is a direct cost, and then we just make sure that it is funded appropriately in the budget so that you are getting what your direct costs are. This is a lot more simple than it has been made into up on Beacon Hill. We have actually drafted legislative language for the senators and the reps and the administration to consider, to put into the budget or somewhere else. But unfortunately, nobody has raised their hand and said that they are willing to try to fix this issue. So now we're at the point where there are a lot of legal challenges going on. There are a lot of concerns. There's a lot of confusion. And it's very unfortunate. And I just wanted to make sure that I came here tonight and just did my due diligence and just trying to be as forthcoming as possible about what this is with respect to our role in this, which is actually very minimal. And I know we were dragged into this conversation, it's just been a joy. Let me tell you, the job would be a little easier if you didn't have to do it. But we did get pulled into this conversation, I think, about sort of the larger challenges that we certainly know exist. The auditor's office plays a very small role in this. It has been magnified because of some of the distortions that I believe have come out of Beacon Hill about what an unfunded mandate determination means. Unfunded mandate determination doesn't change the law, doesn't impact the law, is not a get out of jail free card. An unfunded mandate determination is simply us saying, there's a mandate, we want to know what the costs are from the administration, and then once that's given to us, we want to make sure that you get your money that you're entitled to here in these local communities. And we will fight for that. That's our job. So as soon as we get those fiscal impact statements completed, we can fulfill our duty, we can count the numbers, and we can make sure that you get reimbursed for those costs the way that you're supposed to in accordance with the law. This is in front of the courts right now. Some folks have already taken this to the courts, so it is a matter that's going to be decided. We've issued an opinion. We're not the courts. No, we're not the courts. But we have issued our opinion, and it's our opinion that you should get funded for the implementation of this law in accordance with the law. That's it. So I hope that that helps. I see some head nods around here. I hope it helps a little bit. We want to do the best that we can to make sure that we remain available to you, okay, to assist as you have these conversations locally. Thank you.
Thank you. I hit the good one. Okay, thank you. I think what you're really asking or saying, thank you. What you're really saying, I think what you're really saying, okay, is from your purview that all they have to do, okay, is funding, right? I mean, is that pretty much it? I mean, they have to say that we're going to fund it. This is how we're going to fund it. Is that a simple thing from your purview? Okay. Other than that, it's not your concern.
Jeff, you have a question?
One question.
What are considered usual direct costs?
Yeah, if I could take this. Thank you for this question. I'm happy to answer these questions. I'm going to turn that one off, maybe? I think that's interfering for some reason. This is just fun. Hello? Yeah, you see that? The auditor. We're auditing the situation right here. Just kidding. Gonna lighten the mood a little bit. Sorry, thank you so much. So, this is a great question. I'm actually really glad I took it because I do have to go right after this question. I'm speaking at an event in Amesbury in 5 minutes. Obviously, that's not going to happen on time, but I want to make sure I answer this question. We cannot predict what will be considered a direct cost because we do not set policy. So people will say to me, well, why haven't you said what the direct costs are? And the reason is because not being a legislator anymore and also not being in the administration. The auditor's office doesn't get to set policy. There's a separation of powers where we do not vote on legislation, we do not make legislation, we do not set policy. We just have the authority to do these, to handle these funding aspects. That's it. And with the direct costs, I can tell you what I'm hearing is what I wanted to say. What I am hearing from the administration is that they are likely to limit direct costs if this gets determined by the courts to be in agreement with the unfunded mandate determination from our office, that it's very likely that they will look at zoning and say that regarding the zoning itself, the implementation of the zoning, whether that's consulting, whether that's expert, design folks, planning, hours spent, special town meeting perhaps, that costs money, things like that could be up for consideration. I cannot say that it will be, again, because I don't set policy, but just hearing from the administration talking and sort of defending their position as to why they did not do the fiscal impact statement. It has been said many times, this is about zoning, this is about zoning, this is about zoning. So it is very likely that they do have the authority to set what the costs are. We do not.
Okay, so things like extra expenses for schools, for...
It's highly unlikely that that would be determined by this administration to be indirect costs. Indirect costs.
So that wouldn't be covered? No.
Direct costs is all that would be covered under the unfunded mandate aspect.
Any increase in any kind of expenses is borne by us? Right.
It would be very likely to be considered an indirect cost if it is not directly considered by this administration in their Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to be directly part of implementing zoning. So again, I cannot say for sure what that would look like, and this is before the courts. The courts are going to really be the ones to decide on what constitutes this, who they're going to direct to do what. The courts could look back at the administration and ask them to come up with what their direct costs are and then bring it back for reconsideration. We just don't know. So really at this point, folks, we're looking to the courts to decide what's going to happen next. And I'm hopeful that that will happen sooner rather than later for everybody's sake here, okay? All right. All right, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight. Thank you. And we'll be in touch soon. And if I didn't get a chance to answer your question, you had one because I do have to go, shoot me an email, give me a call. I'm around. I live in Methuen. You can find me at Market Basket on my time off, okay? I'm generally speaking in a hoodie, not a blazer, though, so try to recognize me. Okay, thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. I think that was very informative. I think that clears, some of the issues up that concerns people. From my perspective, it seems that the legislature needs to make a decision on this. And I don't understand, honestly, why they refuse to make that decision. It would clear up a lot of things for us in the community on how to go forward. I think one of the things I did get out of this was that to go forward approving the 3 citizens petitions is before a decision is made on the funding mechanism. We probably should be waiting until at least they give us a clear definition of what the funding mechanism is. Otherwise, we could be bearing costs that we shouldn't be bearing costs at this time. So I don't know. People say, oh, there'll only be a little bit of, there'll only be so much. Who knows? Whatever it is, it should be. They should follow the law, like they want us to follow the law, right? It's a law for us, but not for them. They don't have to follow the law with the audit, but we have to follow the law with the mandate. Both are mandated, but they don't have to follow, we must. So that's the hypocrisy that I think rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Whether you're Democrat, unenrolled, or Republican, I think there are a lot of people, I know in this room, there's a mix of people, both Democrat, Republican, and unenrolled, who all have the same general feeling about this issue. So before we move on, I just want to say, recognize Hugo Weinberg's working on the camera here. We've got Lisa Maki working on the camera over there. Okay, and we have Mark working on the live stream. It's really, you can see it's a hard job. You know? So we thank you for that. Now, what we do here as a committee, whenever we have an event like this, we take an opportunity to let you know something that we do that we feel is dear to our hearts. Okay, and that is the scholarship fund that we have. Okay, and each year we give a scholarship which is now $1,000. And the only way, thank you. It's $1,000 only because of the contributions of people like yourself. It's just throw a few bucks into the basket, and that's that. We can't accept anything more than $1,000, so don't even try it. But any contribution you can. Our scholarship is very simple. I mean, it's not finance directed. It's not. We don't have anybody go through the rigmaroles that other organizations do. It's a simple essay. What the American flag means to me. That's it. Every year we get heartfelt responses and letters. And then on Flag Day, the recipient reads their essay publicly for the first time on the North Reading Common underneath the great, beautiful American flag in front of the Veterans War Memorial. So you can't, get any more American than that. So, now, so if you'd be nice enough to make a small contribution, or large, as I said, thank you. Okay. I usually follow it, then lean over you, but that, just pass it on, please, thank you. All right, so we have Lilia Maselli. Did I say that right? Okay, good. From Wilmington. Wilmington just voted against the MBTA Act, okay, for the second time. All right. Middleton is not able to attend because they can't, they have a lawsuit because their lawsuit is the unfunded mandate. All right, they don't feel like they should go forward with it as long as it's not, so that becomes constitutional on their part. And they also have, I don't know if it's a two suits or it's a suit that includes the fact that their unique situation is they're not surrounded by any town that has MBTA service, right? So that's how I understand that, okay? And so my purpose in inviting Lilia is, she's a select woman for the town of Wilmington, and is it, what are the issues that they had? I mean, because we try to, I'm going to say this right. I invited all the selectmen, I invited all the CPC representatives that we have, and they refused to come to a meeting like this. And the concern that I have in that regard is that they listen to one side, and they get their legal input from KP Law. KP Law also represents the other side with 5 other towns. So they're doing this on both sides of their mouth, as the term would go. So, I do this, the committee does this, simply because we want people to have as much information as they possibly can so they can make an informed decision. I'm not worried about the decision that people make. What I do want to know is that they're informed, they hear the other side, And I always find it very disappointing. And even when I was on the board, I noticed this, when I was on the select board, all right? They only listen to their side. It's like an echo chamber. And I just don't understand why. But when they do that, that's where this comes into play. All right? We shouldn't have to do that. They should present both sides of the issue themselves, not just their side. So, anyway, I'm going to turn this over to Lilia and let her give you the Wilmington perspective.
Can I just have
Yes.
in regards to the talk, last night, and I'm sure you were there, some of us were there, some of us watched it, it's been jammed down our throats that this petition, or this citizen's petition that is being brought to town meeting is not gonna affect anything in town, okay? Now, I'm to the understanding, having looked into 3A, that they come in, you know, even if there is a petition, the state can come in and say, we're gonna build there, or we're gonna do this, we're gonna add 3 stories onto Edgewood, maybe not to Martin's Landing, but to Edgewood. Now, is that a possibility if this goes through? That's all I wanna know, you know, as we were being told to our faces, last night, and I couldn't tell you how many times, that this is not going to affect the number of people coming into town, the number of buildings that are being built, and I just want some, so that the people can hear it.
Okay. I know my answer.
What I've learned, I know mine.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for the invitation. Good evening, everybody. My name is Lilia Maselli, and I'm a member of the Select Board in Wilmington. I'm in my second term, starting my second year of my second term. So we have voted down the MBTA overlay project now twice. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but it is publicly known that my select board colleagues we were all unanimously opposed to this mandate. In our meetings at both town meetings, we had a special town meeting back in December. You know, we had lots of discussions at it in our weekly or bi-weekly meetings. We had our planning director and board come in and discuss it many times. And you know, our planning director was faced, as I'm sure yours is, with, you know, a tough task. It's their job to do this overlay, you know, whether they want to or not, you know, and I will give props to our planning director, Valerie Gingrich, that she did a great job with a terrible situation, okay? However, you know, the town came together, you know, there was lots and lots of talks. We had a bunch of residents get together and kind of do a no campaign, vote against campaign. You know, they had, you know, signs. In fact, we borrowed signs from, or they borrowed signs from Jeff. But they got a lot of online, you know, community support. And, you know, I think there was a lot of healthy discussion, which I know doesn't happen a lot online, but there was a lot of healthy discussion on both sides, for and against. And I would say that ultimately, probably a lot like your town, of the people that are opposed to it, you know, it's more of the same like-mindedness of why. So I was personally against bringing it back to our annual town meeting in May. I was the only one of my board to not bring it back, because I felt like our residents, you know, pretty much were, you know, put a definitive, you know, stake in the ground and said, no, we don't want this. I mean, we had over, I think, if, you know, town meetings, I don't know how it is in your town, but I think most towns, it's tough getting people to those meetings, you know. We had close to 500 people at this town meeting back in December. And I want to say, you know, the numbers were, I think it was 330 to, you know, Tuesday. There was about 130 vote variance of pushing it down. So it got knocked down pretty largely, yeah, decisively. And then, and I felt like, you know, our residents spoke. Why are we bringing them back? Why are we dragging them? I want them to come to town meeting, please come. But why are we bringing this back up? You know, it's, you know, pardon the expression, but it's just going to piss them off if they do it all over again. You know what I mean? And in reality, in a matter of, you know, 5 months, 4.5 months, how many people really changed their minds with anything that was going on? You know, you might have got some people switching, you know, sides or whatever, but the biggest fallout was gonna be, people were just gonna be annoyed with it, and they were. And I will also share that it narrowly was squashed by, I think, under 10 votes. Wow. Which is scary, because had people not hung around for it or stayed or couldn't, you know, and we didn't have nearly as many people because, you know, it's people have, you know, lives and things to do and stuff. And again, I think people were like, I voted on this already, I'm not doing it. So it really could have went a different way for us. So I'm thrilled that, you know, the no vote was received loud and clear again. Luckily, I can speak because we're not in our lawsuit hasn't been filed yet. I did clear that with our town manager, but we are moving forward with, you know, an exemption for this unfunded mandate, you know, which I can't go into in specifics. But, you know, from people I've talked to, people that spoke at these meetings, you know, online, there's really a cohesive, you know, sense of why we don't want it. And my feelings are the same. As this gentleman mentioned here, our infrastructure. Okay, we are, you know, Wilmington, I'm gonna speak for Wilmington, obviously, we have been building like crazy between apartments, condos, townhouses, I know you guys are too. You know, I think, I wanna say in the past 2 years, 2 or 3 years, and we still have 2 projects that are just starting to kick off, of which are 40Bs, affordable, true affordable housing. We probably have built over like 1,500 units or so, well over what they're asking us. They're asking us to about 1,248 units, the MBTA. So, you know, none of that can be taken into consideration because they just won't let us. And one of them is literally, I don't know, 300 yards from a train stop. So we are bustling. We do not have a lot of green space left. You know, I don't know where else we're gonna put any of this stuff. We've met our affordable housing, you know, threshold, which is a great thing. And they're telling us, you know, we gotta put in these 1,248 units, has to be within the half mile of the train stations, of which we have 2 in town in Wilmington. Going back to our planning director, you know, she had done this in the committee overlay on Route 129, which you're probably all familiar with, you know, shoots right down to Tewksbury. We have Market Basket Plaza. So kind of from the McGovern auto shop going towards into Wilmington to Wilmington House of Pizza and a little further up. That's the area that is was the proposed overlay. Again, she did a great job with a bad situation. But, you know, there's a lot of businesses there. There's, you know, small businesses, Wilmington House of Pizza, EJ's at Dunks, you know, all these places that the majority of these businesses are not owned. The land is not owned by these businesses. So if this overlay, let's just say, came into place and, you know, one of these owners of these buildings gets approached, you know, they have 4 or 5 buildings in this small space, you know, that might be hard money, especially with the way costs are today. That might be hard money to walk away from some of these landowners. And now these businesses are gonna be out of business. And they have to either likely leave Wilmington, find another place, and if they were to say, you know, build these businesses with apartments on top, how far down the road, you know, these people can't, it's their livelihood. They can't just put their livelihood and not pay their bills for X amount of years until they can maybe afford the rent on this new building. So I feel that's a huge negative, okay? We're gonna run businesses out of town. The talk was that, it will make it like a Main Street area, it'll be walkable. I don't know about you, but I don't wanna walk on Route 129 on any good day in a crosswalk if I don't have to. I mean, there are no parks there, there's no schools that you're walking to. Where are you walking? You know, you're gonna walk to go get pizza? Sure. I don't even know how many people would walk to the train station that's a half mile away. Because, you know, we're a very, you know, busy, you know, generation, okay? Or just culture, I really should say. We wanna get where we're going when we, you know, get there. I know I don't take public transportation to work, but if I did, I know I would be driving there because I don't have the grace to give myself, 20 minutes to take a nice walk. Especially, if you have kids or you're caring for somebody at home or whatever the case may be. So I personally, in my opinion, think the majority of people that are living within this half mile that we've built all this stuff are still taking a car and driving it, okay? So that leads to our roads, okay? Now you have more congestion on our roads because all these people have cars, the majority probably have cars, okay? They're not using them during the week, they're gonna use them on the weekends. So now our town's more congested, our roads are getting more beat up, and we're not getting any money for it, and it doesn't sound like we're going to get any money because that has nothing to do with zoning. Our schools are gonna be overpopulated. In Wilmington, we already have issues with school. We're working on building a new one, and but we already have our preschool and kindergarten in our middle school. We don't while this is all going on, we don't need to be stretched even thinner. And then of course there's police, there's fire. It goes on and on. We in Wilmington, we're just finally getting a space to put a second fire station that we've needed for decades and decades and decades. We're just doing this now. This comes in, we're gonna be kind of behind the 8 ball all over again. We're gonna need a third one. It just, the effects of what they're trying to do are on a grand scale. I grew up in a city. I grew up in Malden. I had a great childhood, love it. I'm proud to be from Malden, will always will be. When my husband and I were looking to, we had our youngest son and we were looking to buy a home. He's from Philadelphia, but he grew up in the city as well. We were both looking for something more rural. We wanted a backyard. We didn't want to be so close. I didn't want to see into my neighbor's home and all that. We just wanted something, for kids to run around and that. So for me, Wilmington was country, okay? And, but loved it. It was easy to, get to Malden. We have a business in Reading. So we came up and we looked at Reading, we looked at North Reading, we looked in Wilmington, and we ended up in Wilmington. So it worked out for many reasons, close to the highway, all that stuff. I don't want Wilmington to turn into a city. I don't have anything against the city. Like I said, that's not a jab at cities. I'm a city girl, always will be, But that's not why I came to Wilmington. I didn't come here for it to be turned into a city. I didn't come here so there's, high rises, because I truly feel, it goes back to the zoning. The state's coming in saying, we want 1,248 units. Our zoning plan said, because of a development that we have and this and that, realistically, it's only gonna be about 200 units. I don't know how, we're told that there's a spreadsheet, they put the numbers in, but I have a hard time buying into that, because if they're telling us they want 1,248 units and we go back and say, okay, great, there's enough to build 200 and whatever it was units, they're gonna come back and say, okay, where are you putting the other 1,000? And then they threaten us with grants. To take away the grants. Take them away, because you know what? I'm gonna be spending more money if these things happen, because I need to improve the roads, do the schools, all that stuff. This is gonna cost towns and cities a fortune. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Some cities may welcome this because it may help them with their, economic development, bringing more people in business, and that's wonderful. Wilmington needs more businesses and stuff, but this isn't the way to get them. Overpopulating our towns. We have a ton of empty storefronts. We're working on that. We have a committee working on that. We're all actively trying. We want people to come to Wilmington, This is not gonna help. We're gonna have more emptiness because costs are too high. Rents are too high. If you look around, the number one reason most people leave businesses that they don't own, obviously the property, it's because their rent has been raised and they need to move to a more affordable. They need to make a profit, So there's just, so many different reasons. For me, people have talked about, oh, you're afraid of the landscape of Wilmington. I'm not afraid of that. I'm afraid of the consequences that come with building. Oh, well, it won't happen. It'll be 10 years down the road. Okay. Well, you know what? It's my job to worry about the future of my town. We should all be residents or select board members, it doesn't matter. As citizens of a community, we need to watch out for the next generation, not just ours, not just today. We have to plan. That's why we plan 10 years down the road, you know, our budgets and all that stuff, projects. You know, if we take this on, we're leaving the next generation and generations to come with bigger problems. And the thing that probably annoys me the most is when they say affordable. Nothing about this is affordable. These rents will be at market rent. And then they'll have some affordable units, which might be, I don't know, 10% less. It's not affordable. It's not a 40B. It's not a 40B where they will be truly affordable units. You know, we just built, there were just some condos built in Wilmington on, right near,
129.
yes, exactly right, on 129. They're going for $600,000-700,000 a unit. They're beautiful. I haven't seen the inside. I mean, it's very aesthetically pleasing. I love what they did with the area. It's great. Fits there, but who can afford that? I'm buying a house for that if I can afford it. But that's the other thing. It's going to keep driving the cost of housing up in our towns. When I think it was last year for Wilmington anyway, I think we had last year or two our first like $1 million home, you know, and I was like, I bought my home for like $280,000. I mean, granted, it was 20 some odd years ago, but the point being, it's like, wow, it's crazy. And I know it's everywhere. That's not, you know, just Wilmington. It's everywhere. But it's crazy to think that, and it's just going to keep happening because if people are going to start paying $600,000 to $700,000 for a condo in Wilmington, what are they paying for a house? What are they paying for rent? And these kids today, my oldest son has graduated college. You know, he has an MBA in finance. He's working a full-time job, doing great. He lives at home so he can save money. And I welcome that by all means, but how are these kids supposed to pay rent? They'll never save for a house. They won't be able to, you know? So it really just has this effect that just keeps going and going. Just go look at my notes. I think I hit all my points. You know, this whole mandate, you know, to me, I don't think the state, I love what a lot of things Diana said because I love that she was being transparent about the untransparency of the Capitol Hill there. Beacon Hill, excuse me. What is the purpose of this? They say it's for the housing crisis. Yeah, we have a housing crisis. I don't deny that. It's true. We have a housing crisis, but again, not affordable. Who's going to move into these? And the thought is to put it near an MBTA so people without cars can go and get on the train. It's not going to happen. We live in communities that people want to move to, that want to raise families in. It's easy to commute, you know, even to Boston. I mean, we're, you know, 17, 18 miles away if people so choose to drive in. But we're in a great location, easy access to the highways, you know, 93, 95. So we are desired towns. You know, you might get, and I'm not speaking for Westford, but I'm just thinking of a town that is, you know, has a lot of greener space and stuff. That might be great for them because they can, you know, build it up. We don't need to be overpopulated. And I think, you know, there's been, as you know, so many changes since this mandate came down. You know, like Diana said, you know, it went to the court and all that stuff. Even if they fund it, which I was glad she explained what she did, even if they were to fund it, it's going to just be for the direct costs. It's not going to be for the infrastructure. It's not going to be for any of that stuff. The other side, okay, if you don't comply, the state's going to come in and say, well, we're going to put this here. Go ahead. I mean, if you're going to do it, you know, we don't have many places to put it, so you're probably going to put it in the same place we were going to put it because there's no place else to go. So, you know, we don't have too much of a concern about that. You know, if they're going to do what they want. This is not, you know, sticking it to the state, as some people say. That's the furthest thing from my mind. It's just not right. These are our cities and towns. We have the city and town governments in place to run these towns. Why is the state doing this? Who are they to come in and do that? You know, it's the law. I understand it's the law. But you know what, we're gonna fight that law. Win or lose, I'd rather spend our tax dollars fighting it than paying for all this nonsense that's gonna come up and ruin our towns. So there's no easy answer here, and you know, I do respect the opinions of people who are for it. People have made good cases for it. Don't always agree with it, but you know, it's a tough one for a lot of people, but I just can't get on board with it. The gentleman in the back had raised his hand. No, we said no in a special town meeting last December, and then because all the mandates changed and the date got pushed out, we were able to get it back on a special town meeting, at our annual town meeting this past May, earlier this month, and it got knocked down again. No, we are not in compliance, and we are gonna. Yep. Exactly right, sir. You're absolutely, that's a great point.
Can you repeat it?
I will. Yes. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, if you couldn't hear the gentleman in the back, he had, one of the things he had said, and it's a very good point, and I've said it myself, once you open the door for the state to come in, they're gonna keep coming in. That door is never gonna close again. What's gonna be next, you know? And then he had also mentioned, let's say the state does come in and says, well, we're doing this anyway, they build, they stay open, you know, I'm sorry, they don't get the business, they don't get, you know, people to rent, they're gonna make it low-income housing. They could. It's a fact. Will they? I don't know, but it's a true possibility. Right.
We did.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, you guys are on it because your neighbors have more, it cuts through. A butter? Adjacent, yeah, yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Talk up, please, because we can't hear you. I can't hear me, I can't hear you. Okay, there is, if I can get this out correctly, Martin's Landing, as you know, is a 55 and older, okay, it has certain association requirements and so on. There are two thoughts on this, okay? One by the town that says it will not affect Martin's Landing. However, there's sufficient information out there that says that because it's an overlay And the state law says that this is for, you can't restrict families from living in the overlay. Okay, so there's a conflict there. Right, so it's a concern. I think an example is, one of the examples that have been shared with me is that if that's the case, all right, people can, property owners, condo owners can rent their unit to people that are family friendly. All right, so they can do that according to the wording in the law. It's tricky in some sense, but it can negatively affect Martin's Landing in that regard. Is that right? Okay. So, I mean, we read this I've had people read it extensively. I'm not really as much of an expert as some of the other people, but it can affect Martin's Landing. So what someone told me, said, well, I'll tell you what, if that's possible and people start doing that, regardless of what the association law policy is, then I'm going to rent it to a family, teenagers, and not teenagers, but college students, okay? Because they can do that, all right? They have the right to do that. So it's not a positive issue, or it's not beneficial to Martin's Landing. You come in, you buy a piece of property there or a condo, you spend $500,000, and then you find out the over 55 doesn't apply anymore, even though the association rule says so. But the state can overrule. And I know we're being told by the town that that's not the case, but when we read the terminology, they always use words like may, can, possible, you know, in my opinion, those things, that's usually the answers you get. And those are not definitive, and that's where a big problem is. We don't get definitive answers. Okay? All right, so when I listen to our selectman, Steve O'Leary, who says it's not going to happen, well, I guess we have to accept his word that it won't happen. But down the road, this is just the tip of the iceberg, is what we're talking about here. So does that answer your question?
The other thing is that, let's say, a one bedroom now, buy it is a little over $500,000. So let's say that the person who owns it, after a certain period of time, can rent it out. And I'm thinking of like a one bedroom, if someone paid over $500,000 for, what could the rent possibly be? I mean, I just find it hard to believe.
They can cut that into 3 bedrooms if they want.
Well, hold on, Mark, hold on. There are restrictions on what they can do with each unit. It depends on the size of the unit. If you have a 2-bedroom, for example, okay, well, you can have work done in that unit to make it a 3-bedroom, as opposed to, as long as you conform to the, was it 10 by 7? It's 10 by 7? And one window. As long as you have that, you can add that room. Okay? So, again, the town doesn't look at it that way. The town looks at it, this won't happen. They just won't happen. Trust us. Yeah. Well, houses. it's the new never-ending story. Right? So I had, because I think you had a question, but I'm going to ask you a question. Have you experienced any grant losses at this point?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not.
Has the state responded to your decision yet?
Yeah, I can't obviously talk about that.
Okay.
I can say that, yes, they are aware of our decision.
But they haven't responded or anything like that, or you don't have to tell me.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have to tell me how or what they
Yeah,
responded with.
They have responded,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Because Middleton would have been here, but because of their lawsuit, the double lawsuit against the state, they can't talk publicly about
We will-
their situation.
We will be filing our, exemption, so my time is limited on when I'll be able to speak about this, but right now, but yes,
Right.
that's the way it's gonna go. We will
Okay.
end up in litigation.
And the other thing is that I have on this that kind of boggles my mind. Why does the state have to take over the entire town bylaw for one location? I don't understand that. That tells me that they want control of the whole town to do whatever they want to do. Okay? If they came up and said, you know what, pick a place and I want you to change the bylaw just for that place, it probably might have been a bit more better received. I don't know. Okay? But I don't know if that's possible because usually by law you can't just do the one thing. I'm going to reach over to here. Mr. Gannon, do you have a question?
I just want to know what their compliance date is. You have to comply by what date?
It was, what was July?
15th, I think.
July 12th, yeah, July 12th, 15th, yeah.
If you don't, at that point, you will be,
Non-compliant. We'll be officially non-compliant,
Thank you.
yeah.
And what was that date? July?
I think it's July 12th or 15th.
July 14th, okay. And I think it's all the same for everybody.
Yeah,
at this-
they had
Not everybody, but, most of the group now, so, yes.
Yeah, let's go back to Martin's Landing, okay? 60 and older, right? 55, okay.
55.
So they own it at 55 years old. Is there anything saying that they can't rent it out? Oh gee, my grandkids, there is that says they can't, my grandkids just moved to town?
Yes.
You can't?
No, you
Okay.
can't do that. You have to have one person in the.
That's
unit
55 or
that's
older.
55.
Okay, so now let's go with 55. I mean, there are 55-year-old people that had a kid 10 years ago, just because they waited so long. That was the thing to do. So they get these kids coming in, and you say they can only have one bedroom. I mean, I lived in a family of 8 kids, and we only had 2 bedrooms, and all of us slept in those bedrooms. So you can have a hide-a-bed, you can have bunk beds, you can have, so there's no saying how many people live in that one bedroom.
Correct, that's correct. Yeah. Yes.
I just want to say, all the respect to Jan over there, but that is not impacted by the bylaw. That is the contract, that's the condo association document.
I know that.
You can add, if you're saying that you could add more people to the bedroom, you could do that now. It
Yeah,
has
no, I
nothing
know
to do
that.
with the bylaw.
I know
So
that.
I don't think that is what should be our deciding factor in whether to pass compliance.
It's not the factor, I'm just making the fact be known. They're saying, one bedroom, you could go in there, in any apartment that has one bedroom, Edgewood, Martin's Landing, anything, and put 20 kids in there as long as you have 3 sets of bunk beds, 2 hide-a-beds. That's all I'm saying. There's no,
That's not a 3A zoning question, that's just a building code, fire code.
I know that, but again, it's going to be affected.
Right.
Well, it won't be changed
Well, I
by
think,
the town meeting.
is it Caitlin? Yes, Caitlin. And we've asked the town council on this a few times at the meetings, okay? And they've not given a definitive answer about how the overlay impacts Martin's Landing.
They must
Great.
do
I know what they, yeah, I mean, we both have been there, right? What?
There is a definitive answer, and that's it won't impact the 55 and if you will.
No, okay, that's an opinion, that's an opinion. The law, we know by the wording of the law, don't ask me to quote it because I'm not that expert, but we know that the overlay will impact Martin's Landing, okay, and supersede its association bylaws. Yes, it will. So we're gonna have to agree to disagree at this point.
But my problem is that the attorney that spoke last time that said that cited cases that did not even touch on the topic. So my question is your source, and I have more faith in town council than the case.
I get that. Our source is the document, the law,
No, I know.
Okay.
It's not mentioned.
and we've had lawyers look at it.
I'm aware.
That's fine, that's fine. And you know how many lawyers we can put in a room and get in how many different decisions, okay? So that's the issue, that's what we run up against. As I said, KP Law is representing 5 towns to the contrary of what North Reading is doing. So they're representing both sides of the issue, all right? So what do they know that we don't know? I mean, it just begs the question. I mean, we have to challenge that because it's not making sense to us that a law firm would represent a town and say it won't impact this town, and then at the same time, on behalf of another town, say it will. I mean, it just doesn't, to me, differences of opinion. So lawyers, are well-educated on the law and so on, but they still have to go through the process of making the right decision, or the wrong decision, whatever the case might be. So, obviously that's where the Supreme Court comes into play. Yes?
Quickly, are you one of the Wilmington, like Jim Maselli?
No, different spelling, I'm sorry.
Oh.
M-A-S and
I'll give you a
M-I-C.
test. All right.
Thank you. I get that all the time.
I'm a Wilmington boy at heart.
Oh, all right.
At the end of the video, my family, we watched the broadcast cable of the last town meeting, perhaps, and they took a vote against the MBTA.
Yes.
At the end of the video, they cited a chapter and verse of the laws, and clearly to me said, no, you can't do this to a town. And I just wondering, you happen to know that off the top of your head? If not, I'm gonna have to go back and sit there and look for a rerun.
Yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head, I apologize, but I do know what you're talking about. And you might even have in that paperwork when I was reading a reference to it. But basically, they can come and rewrite those laws. The state, yeah. They can come in and do that. They have the right to do that as a state, unfortunately, on things like that. I wanted to add real quick, I see a question, just when you brought up, I don't know anything about Martin's Land, I know where it is, but I don't know anything about it. But I wanted to also mention, there's nothing in these plans for senior housing. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think that would have been, something that a lot of people could have latched onto, because I know in Wilmington are in need of senior housing. We have Deming Way, which has senior housing, which is state funded and owned. Who knows? It's unfortunate that they just didn't, there was obviously not enough thought put into this. But I thought that was unfortunate. Sir.
I just wanted to add a comment. I think the biggest negative of this whole thing is that you're allowing the state to come in and take over. And once you open that door and the camel gets the nose under the tent, it's just gonna keep on going. So you can say anything about, it doesn't affect Martin's Landing now, but tomorrow, once they have control of it, it can affect Martin's Landing. All right, if they can vote anything they want, they're not going through an audit, because they don't want it. So you think that they can't vote anything they want once they get in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where my point came in, when I said, why do they have to take the bylaw of the whole entire town?
Yeah, whether it was one little area or something else, you never let state come in and take over.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I was talking about palatability here.
Yeah.
You know, if,
I'm just saying, you want to keep them out.
Right.
I'm from the government, I'm here to help. No, you're not.
Yep.
Right, keep them out. That's my comment.
Dick?
If the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, if you haven't gone on their website, you should. That's going to answer a lot of questions about the organization, the subsidies, the rental programs they have. Do yourself a favor and go on that website and look it over pretty good. Have been retired at some time, but go over the regulations again here today from last year. The intent of MBTA 3A Act is to encourage the production, in other words, the construction of new multifamily housing on developable land of scale and density that is the objective of the 3A. Our proposal is taking existing housing and offering that up. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but last night I think the chairman said they tentatively will accept our proposal even though they didn't like it. Am I correct in that? But at any rate, this,
Excuse me,
executive
Dick,
office-
were you talking about what Steve presented?
Yes, and Warren Pierce.
Right, okay, I just wanted to get clarification on that.
So, this office, Executive Office of Housing, they, even when you get your plan approved, from that point on, every year, they're gonna determine whether you're in compliance. And if you know anything about regulations, they only go in one direction. So, what's it gonna be in 2 years or 3 years? I can envision them accepting this, coming back, and we're gonna be back here next year, the year after, and saying, you know, you violated the spirit and the intent and of these regulations. We want another 50 acres and do it right this time. They want brand new construction, additional construction. That's the intent of this 3A law. So I think we've got a real problem here, and yes, I agree. We need to take a hard look at our council.
Okay. Mr. Gannon?
So, when the proposal that was originally submitted, what was said last night and what was true and what Danielle and I have said a number of times is, it was accepted. They held their nose, they wanted new housing, but they accepted it. So as far as the agency you're talking about is concerned, we're done. What happened was, the town rejected it, and by doing that, you opened it up to a date, which is July, I believe July 15th, somewhere in that range. At that point, they could come back and say, you know what, we didn't like it the first time, and we certainly don't like it now, so we're gonna put it somewhere else. So that is what the citizens petition is asking us to do, is reconsider on blending, now that the law is the law and not maybe the law. So, and the crystal ball, if you will, the future, I don't know. I also, Mr. King said last night, if they were to come along and ask for something again, then we would be suing them instead of them suing us. So I get it, I understand it. I also heard last night that our town administrator, unlike yours evidently, is holding grant applications on a corner of his desk and not asking for them because he knows if we don't accept it, we're gonna have to give that money back. So that is kind of where North Reading is. And I heard during the election, let's make it about North Reading. All due respect, you mentioned 40B. This town will fight tooth and nail to have another 40B apartment built because we've been doing. Been in town for 30 years. I come from housing projects from Cambridge. I get housing, but how should I put it? The frustration is one that I understand, but the crystal ball work that's going on about what they could and couldn't do,
Linfield, their piece of property is on Route 1. It's not what the state wanted, but they accepted it. All we had to do was the same, accept it. You chose not to. So we've opened ourselves up to someone coming in. I pray to the Lord that does not happen, because it could be anywhere. It could be right here, as a matter of fact. This space could be one that they then consider to put housing on. So I will now shut up, and I will sit down.
Thank you, Jim. I was just thinking, because I picked up the sheet here about gaming the system. The proposal that is, the citizens petitions that are before us now would fall into gaming the system. We think that we can get away with telling the state that we have this property and we're not, and we're gonna protect the 55 and over location, not to be overruled by the state. I'm paraphrasing, of course, all right? But to the point made over here, it's like, well, when July 15th comes, they're gonna say, you know, I didn't like that, so I'm gonna change, this is what you gotta do. Okay, so I think I think you're hearing that fear around here, the crystal ball that you're talking about. Because there's no definitive statement saying in the law that this will not happen, that means it can. And so I think that's what the concern is on people who are not in favor of the
The
MBTA.
citizens petition does have that amendment in it.
I know, that's what I'm
If
saying.
If they reject the citizens petition and the amendment, we are then suing them.
Yeah, well, so either way, it's gonna cost us money.
It's already costing us
Okay,
money.
I know, but it's gonna cost us money whether we win or lose, okay? Because if we win and it's stopped, the state's gonna try and impose what they want to do, and then we have to sue them, okay? If it passes, they're not gonna like, it's really more of a lose-lose, they're not gonna like, they accepted our proposal just for the mere fact to get the vote approved, get the MBTA approved.
No, the agency that Danielle brought the original proposal to, Chippewa plan brought it to, said, not happy about it. They put it through their formula, and they said, yep, you have to come up with 750 units, which are already there. We don't like it. We would prefer you put 750 units someplace else, but we will, and they did accept it. All this town needed to do was to do that, and I get Martin's Landing, folks in Martin's Landing, I get their concern, I absolutely, positively do. Personally, I wish it went somewhere else in town, but that got rejected.
Yeah.
That got rejected. I could not agree with you more. I couldn't.
Okay,
I could, but it didn't. The CPC had an opportunity to put it someplace else 2 weeks ago and chose not to. So the only game at this point that's in right now, the game in town right now is the citizen petition, which I will admit, that's my signature.
yeah, okay.
But, as was said at the CPC meeting a month ago, come up with another solution and the citizen petition will be withdrawn. But it wasn't. So for us, and for the grants that are sitting on the grant applications, if you will, the approval of grant, because we've already been approved for them, are sitting there, money we're not going to get, and nor should the town administrator request it, because if we spend it, we then have to figure out how to give it back. That is where we are. That's what I said last night. It was a great conversation. There were lots of opinions. But that's kind of where we are. Wilmington, Middleton, honestly, I could give a rat's patootie about what they're doing. This is North Reading. This is North Reading. This is what we absolutely, positively just had an election where everyone in this town, including some people on the other side, said, let's make it about North Reading, not Middleton, not no place else. said last night, by Ms. Pierce, if some town wins and we are now able to come back and re-vote, then we'll do it. But that's not where we are today. Again, just tell me to shut up.
Yeah, yeah, wait, because I have a question coming over here, but just to clarify, this is not really about Wilmington or Middleton. What it's about is learning and getting a input, so we know that we're not in this alone, whichever side of the argument you're on, okay? And we can learn from Wilmington, we can learn from Middleton, we can learn from another town, okay? Many times you'll see the select board say, well, Wilmington's doing it, so why don't we? or some other town is doing it, why don't we? So it helps us understand the bigger picture. Doesn't mean that we have to agree with them.
You said, ma'am, if the grants don't come, so be it, I'll pay for
Right,
it.
and that's fine.
Is that what
That's
you're
fine.
trying to say?
Right.
If we don't get.
No, I don't know what the town is saying at this
I
point.
hope not.
Okay. Lady in the back?
Yes, so, anyway, my husband and I are from Wilmington, and of course, we were at all the meetings. And it is frustrating when you vote something down, not once but twice. And then at our town meeting, they came in and said, you have a choice of putting it here or there or there. We were, whoa, wait a minute, we turned this down, we said no. One thing I wanna say, you're going to be aware when you vote again, is part of the reason why that was such a narrow margin is because the awareness factor was not there. It was a tight vote, as Lisa said, like about 10 people. Do you know how many people didn't know that we were voting on it at the town meeting because they thought that it was done? It was a done deal, not once but twice we voted it down. And then and literally, there were great proposals, I appreciate the work that was done by the planning board. However, we were so confused, our heads were turned, we said no, what are you talking about? Here or here? And apparently the state can, and then we're willing to take that chance. And I think more towns need to stand up. Manchester by the Sea had to accept a place that they had to choose. Manchester by the Sea is the tiniest little town. And they're on MBTA and their city is even tiny, smaller than us. Can you imagine that? Singing Beach is just, it's ridiculous. So I just say, look where you beware, get the people aware when you vote again, because everyone mostly thinks it's dead. We did in Wilmington.
Thank
It
you,
was
thank you.
frustrating.
As I say, to me, the MBTA situation has nothing to do with the location or the plan. It has to do with the bylaw. Now, when I spoke last night at CPC, our newest elected individual, John Cost on the CPC, had no idea that we were changing the bylaw. No idea. He thought it was a whole different thing. And that I found very concerning, all right? So I had to emphasize, I know I was right because Steve didn't argue with me. So, but it was, it's the bylaw and the taking over of the bylaw that is the issue, in my mind. Not that it's at Martin's Landing, not that it's gonna be anyplace else, Kitty's, right? So, yes.
Yeah, I have an issue. I mean, I keep hearing 62% of the population went out and voted the way they did because. And we say that, and I think the elections went well. I'm not saying anything about the elections. But at town meeting in October, we voted against this thing. 2 years, you're not supposed to bring it up. And you know what? They brought it up, they just changed a few words. So to say 3/4 of the people that, in a town meeting, we had a lot of people, quite a few. And you know what? And my granddaughter was one of them that was at town meeting. She didn't understand what the MBTA thing was all about. As did a lot of people not understand what it was about. So don't say 62% of the town population voted because they wanted this. How much of the town government at town meeting voted against it?
There was a 70-30 difference.
Right, and yes, we didn't have the 62% of town, but those people don't come to, how many of those 62% ever go to town meeting? And I go to town meeting every time there is a town meeting.
I know. Okay, I think,
One more time.
one more time?
I want to answer Pat's question. There were 458 people at the town meeting. 138 of them were from Orange Landing. The total number of registered voters was less than 4%. That being said, the other 96% had a chance to show up and didn't. And that's on the 96% that didn't want to see.
I don't disagree with that.
And
There's nothing to disagree with that.
And so
I mean,
when the question was put to the CPC in January about what needed to be done, the response was hire some dang buses and bring people to the next meeting. Get it before us again. So that is the charge that we took.
right.
And
Right.
whether we do or we don't, that's on us. That's
But,
the-
yeah, but you get, in June, it was brought up in June, you had a chance then. It was brought up in October, you had a chance then. And now the baseball, you get 3 strikes, you know?
The reason Dave Rudloff gave the chair for removing it was the court case. He wanted to wait for the court case to be settled. It wasn't until this year, January, when it was, he flipped. He said, you know, it's the law, I need to now follow the law. He said that last night, and that's what, so that's kind of where we are. The vote last night was 4-1, and that's what will go to the town meeting. The select board has already voted 3-2 in favor, but as stated, it is up to this town to now determine what they want. Do they want to give back some of the current grants we've gotten,
Right.
which total $840,000, and we want all discretionary grants, including the $19,000 for firefighters that some people in this room were ticked off about. We will not be eligible for moving forward come July 15th. That is a fact. That's a fact, unless something changes. You're absolutely correct. And if it does, as stated by Ms. Pierce last night, we would then turn around, have another town meeting, and vote for something else. That is our option. It will be, not a single brick will be laid at Martin's Landing associated with this, nothing. Yes, there are concerns. I'm not smart enough to know whether or not they're real or not. But when someone says, 6 years from now, when I'm dead, they're gonna do this, I'm 70, I will be 76 6 years from now. I won't be dead, I hope. And hopefully I'll find someplace for my 30-year-old to move into. 40B is another issue completely. It's one that the town does not want to deal with. I get that. This one, anyway, so.
Appreciate that, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I hope you appreciate that I let, everybody get their input into it, okay? There was a letter to the editor saying, how, she got a the DTC, candidates night, this guy went to candidates night, both of ours, all right? And he said, nobody answered the question.
They don't.
And I'm thinking to myself, and this person said that at our meeting that he did not know, I did not recognize him. And I'm saying to myself, I always finish with, does anybody have a question? All right? And nobody did, so if I missed this guy somehow, yes.
I agree with you 100%. We had an open mic at the Democratic one. Anybody could have walked up and asked the question. You ended the night with, anyone else have any questions? So I thought about responding and I chose to ignore it.
Me too. Maybe we should write one, one together. Anyway, but thank you all for coming. Thank kiddies for their fantastic service. The bartenders and the waitresses, I hope you were generous to them. Okay. Where's the basket? Does anybody? Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, it's in good hands. It's in good hands. Thank you all.